Welcome to This Just In with This Just In as your host, Justin Core. This is a show where we take a deeper dive into the issues most important to you, maybe some issues you don't know about. They're important to you whether you know about them or not, and we're going to bring them to you. And the guy bringing you those issues today, reporting on them for a long time, this guy, political expert Joe Parris.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stop you there. You called me a political expert last time,
I
and
did.
you got me in some hot water.
I think we got like one comment or text being like, he's a political expert, I'm never going to watch again.
If
It's
Joe
like,
Parris is a
okay.
political expert, what does that make me?
He's like some dude on the internet. I
don't know.
That's exactly what it makes you.
Is this a one-part episode, or do I get two parts?
Brother, this is essentially the third part of a three-part
No,
episode
no,
where
no.
Tyson came in for
No.
just like a quick segment.
Why, did you take the holidays off?
Yeah, brother. So did
okay.
everybody else at this station.
Not this guy. Not this guy.
You burned through all that,
We'll
earlier.
talk about that.
Alrighty.
Yeah, but thanks for having me.
Well, Joe, you're still at least the closest thing to a political expert we could get on This Just In.
Do you want to just
or
use my
this
title?
Joe in?
Oh, do we have it, Andy?
Nah. All right.
okay.
Nice.
Or this Tyson? That's even
honestly,
better.
That's better
Yeah.
wordplay, bro. I'm
And
sorry.
he got his graphic on TV as the
He did.
OTS.
He did for the
There
vote
it
side, he
is.
did. There it is.
Yeah.
This Joe.
This is
You didn't
this
have
is
to
a
find it, Andy.
This is streaming exclusive. This never makes TV. My graphic.
That's right.
It's fine.
That's right. Oh, we may put it on the the teaser vote side this time. But we're going to talk about the legislative session.
Sure.
A lot of big stuff happening, and maybe your eyes glaze over and you think about state politics, but it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your health care, your education for your kids, your taxes, transportation, roads, all that. And some really big conversations coming up on the budget this session. We're going to bring that to you, and we're going to break it all down for you. But first, Joe, the session got underway Monday afternoon with the governor's State of the State address. For those who don't know, what is the State of the State address?
It is the governor's idea for the budget and his vision for the state of Idaho. It's about this year's about a half-hour speech.
Yeah.
All the clapping in between the comments, and the six sevening, and all that.
He had a 6-7 reference.
That's crazy, by the way.
Yeah. The first one in the State of State, I think I can say ever.
Yeah, we'll call Guinness World Record.
We could.
You know, he congratulates himself and his colleagues on a good year, and you were right. You had said, I believe the state of the state they're going to say is strong, and they did say that.
They say that, and they say that every year.
Political expert Justin Core.
Like the State of the Union, it's strong. Just like
very
the State of
strong.
the City, it's strong. It just every year. It's sort of about like what we saw. First half is like bragging, patting
Yeah.
the elected officials on their back, being like, we did a bunch of awesome stuff. Things are awesome because of us. Good for us, and this is what we're going to do this next year to make sure things stay awesome.
I think it should be treated more like open mic night in the future. Wouldn't that be cool if the governor? So airplane food, it's terrible. Anyways, it's not terrible. Our economy, but that
Some might say that the legislative session is open mic night for 3 months, but I wouldn't.
he didn't.
So it's just a budget proposal. What he wants
Yeah,
to see
it's
the
what he
state
wants to see.
spend money on, maybe some cuts, maybe some added programs where he wants to see that money come from.
Yeah. I got to say the
pretty
thing, though.
generic.
I got to say the thing during our coverage. It takes two to tango. So, the State of the State is the governor's idea.
Yes.
The legislature is the one that actually does the work. And
Yes.
we see how different already in the first 2 days, we're seeing how different lawmakers, the legislative branch, their ideas are from the executive branch, the governors.
Okay.
So they pass the bills, they pass the concepts, they get to the governor's desk, he signs them or not, that whole thing. Mm-hmm. They have very different ideas.
Yes. And there are certain bills that require money or budgetary considerations to pay for them. There are also just, flat out budget bills saying like this is how much money this department or agency is going to get. And they figure that all out in Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, which is the budgeting committee for the state. A bunch of those agencies, departments pitch to them, then they debate for a long time, then they send those bills to the legislature, the floor, and then most of the time they pass pretty easily, but sometimes not so much.
Yeah, the funny thing, the governor had said last week in a pre-session media availability, and clearly as a joke, he's like, yeah, it wouldn't be great if I give my State of the State, and they said, okay, and we just left. Like, hypothetically, they
Right.
could. I mean, the only
Right.
thing the legislature is mandated to do under Idaho law, the Constitution, is balance the budget.
Yes.
And then they move on.
And yet, Joe,
And yet.
how does it happen then if there is a balanced budget amendment, if that is required by law and the number one purpose of the legislature, does the state find itself in a deficit?
So it's a projected deficit, which is
Thank
the
you.
key word here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Projected deficit, which is the truth.
That's why he's a political expert.
It's not a spin. I've heard some questions about this on Monday. Well, is
Yes.
this a spin, projected? No, I mean, that's how revenue numbers work, whether it's a small
Right.
business or it's the government, whether, you're at your kitchen table like my wife and I do and be like, what are we getting this month? You project what your income's going to be. You project
Yep.
what your costs are going to be. And if you realize you're going to come up short, and, if you and I are looking at our budgets and, hey, Justin, we're coming up short. We're not going to Disney World this week.
Yeah.
We don't have the
Right.
money for that. So we got to rearrange our budget so we're balanced. The difference between Idaho's budget, especially if you compare to Congress, you have to have a balanced budget in Idaho. You can't borrow from yourself. You can't go into the red. There are some states that have different rules. Of course, we see the national debt's in the trillions. It's going up and up and up. And I think it's good policy, but it also it sets firm rules for the legislature. There's no monkeying around with the numbers in the sense that you can leave something I guess on the bottom line of we'll pay this off later. There are mechanisms that you need to figure out, and one of the proposals from the governor, for example, is we're not going to use rainy day funds. We're not going to use the emergency funds to make up this $43 million projected deficit, which could change, by the way.
You are getting ahead of me.
Yeah,
Again,
I know,
this
I
is
know.
why we have a rundown.
know.
It's all right. It's also a conversation.
See,
so I appreciate
yesterday
that.
when you told me he's not going to read the rundown, I did.
I was right. That was a projection by me that you were not going to read the rundown. No, I'm just kidding. Joe, again, appreciate you coming on. But before we get down into the details too much, let's actually hear what the governor talked about in his State of the State. Andy, roll it.
My friends, the state of our state is strong. We do face challenges, but we've laid a solid foundation for enduring and long-term prosperity.
And that's why Governor Brad Little is calling his budget plan for this year Enduring Idaho. He says there will be budget cuts. Most notably, it will make the 3% spending reductions last fall across most departments permanent.
Responsible leadership means acting early, not waiting for challenges to grow. That's why we took deliberate steps to right-size spending and identify efficiencies across all agencies.
Executive agencies will also renegotiate contracts and eliminate positions that have been long vacant. The plan, among other things, also removes $275 million from the Idaho Transportation Department's Strategic Initiatives Fund, including $110 million for local highway districts. Now, the governor says that is a one-time cut. The governor also said while he will not repeal Medicaid expansion, he is recommending a $45 million general fund reduction in Medicaid expenditures, as he says, to preserve affordable health care access.
Families and businesses across Idaho are grappling with rising costs, particularly in health care, and states everywhere are feeling the same strain. In Idaho, a fast-growing population adds to that pressure.
The governor stressed, though, one thing that will not be cut is the public schools budget.
Looking ahead, our Enduring Idaho plan balances the budget without cutting into public schools. We're going to do it while preserving the things that matter most to our long-term well-being as a state.
That being said, there will be changes that look a lot like cuts. The governor wants to see some inefficiencies eliminated in virtual public school funding and eliminating $10 million in funding for the Idaho Digital Learning Academy.
Our Enduring Idaho plan was carefully designed with strategy and foresight to protect what matters most, the things that will keep Idaho strong today, tomorrow, and decades to come. That starts with our public schools.
Oof. Darn fine reporting, Justin. Darn fine.
And you
All
did it
right.
on a tight deadline. Good job, pal.
It actually was. Thank you, Troy, for cutting that up for me.
All
okay,
right,
so
Troy.
this is a State of State that was more about the cuts more than any other. We talked about there being a deficit now. Projected deficit of $43 million, which sounds like a lot. Other states have weighed in on my social media being like, that is child's play. But
You got
there
full
are
states in your comments?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Shout out to Guam. I'm just kidding.
Not a state.
No, they're not. That was a test you passed. Again, that's why he's a political expert. So they do have rainy day funds, though.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of them that could cover that projected deficit over and over and over and over again. The governor says, though, yeah, I'm not going to dip into that. Why not? Isn't that why we have rainy day funds? Feels like it's raining.
Yeah, and I remember talking, I think it was the governor over the summer, and I talked to legislative leadership, and I asked, tongue-in-cheek, like, well, is it raining? And they say, no, it's not raining. And that's their opinion. The easy thing to do here would to say, all right, yeah, we'll take this money, we'll slap it in.
Yeah, because it's over $1 billion, right?
Yeah, they have a lot of money in reserve.
Yeah.
However, when I talk to Republicans in the majority, they really don't see this as a situation that, like, we don't want to touch the rainy day fund, because this isn't 2008, 2009. This isn't an economic collapse in their perspective. Now, some of the Democrats are having these conversations in a much different light, where they're like, this is bad and it's going to keep getting worse. And so, again, there's a lot of numbers, a lot of projections, especially with the big, beautiful bill and the tax code and all that stuff. We can get into that another time. But the long story short here is the popular belief in terms of the movers and shakers is that it's not raining. We can fix this budget crisis. They won't call it a crisis. We can fix this budget deficit and it'll be fine. The other thing, too, that I'm reminded a lot by certain groups is that the projected budget deficit of $43 million, that's of the December Monitor report,
right, that
could change. I mean, if revenues came in, if taxes came in higher than projected, which is possible, it could cut that. Alternatively, if they come in shorter, like they had at Q4 last year, you could have a bigger deficit. So it's, the JFAC will set the revenue number and they'll figure out what they can do. And I know that one of the criticisms of the governor's address from some folks was, well, he didn't really say anything. He didn't really pitch any big new ideas. And that's a fair perspective. The idea, though, to me was, what is he going to propose? If you don't have money, extra money, you can't be like, okay, I've got this big new spending program, or I've got this big new program, it's going to do great things. It's like, well, how are you going to pay for it? They already moved $30 million out of the Empowering Parent Grants, as they had started to do last year, to move some things over. And there's a lot of places you can cut and trim, and depending on your perspective, those are good or bad moves.
Yeah, and I think that would be the thing. It's like, okay, well, we're going to cover this, but we need to cut here. Also, if we have these other new programs, then we need to cut even more kind of from over here.
Yeah.
Programs that maybe I'm not in favor of or don't think we need anymore. And then that
like Idaho Launch
covers things.
Depending on who you are, Idaho Launch could be worth the money or not. And the governor said that he likes Idaho Launch and he wants to continue his signature, one of his signature programs.
He wants to be the education governor, and I have 2 kids headed to college, so you might understand how I feel about that. Not that it matters. So the governor made every agency cut 3% last year, except education,
public schools. Yep.
Public schools. Thank you. He wants those to become permanent. Does he need the legislature for that? Because last year did by executive action, right? He just said, that's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, when they set the revenue numbers and they set the budgets, that is going to be the legislature that gets the budget done.
Right.
Will they go with that recommendation? Probably. And the 3% holdbacks, too, if you hear from some circles, there was a lot of money that they were able to cut in areas of, like, unfilled jobs or, jobs that had been, vacant for months. Well, instead of having that money allocated to positions that aren't being refilled, take that money back. So that was one mechanism to do it. And some of the agencies, as we've heard, primarily from Democrats that have spoken out on this, some of the agencies are feeling a difference. And that 3% might be a difference between something they want to do and something they have to do. So it's give and take. To answer your question, though, long story short is yes, the legislature will set the budget and the governor can sign it or not.
Yeah.
And he does have line item veto on that, by the way. We did talk about that last year a little bit.
Oh, interesting. Alrighty. Are we going to see cuts to education and Medicaid? We're going to talk about that next on This Just In. Welcome back to This Just In with political expert. We've confirmed it, Joe Parris. We're talking about the governor's state of the state and the budget battle ahead in your Idaho legislature. It's going to affect your taxes, education, and maybe health care, because the governor says he will not repeal Medicaid expansion, but maybe we'll make some cuts to Medicaid. Is that right? What is it going to look like? Speaker of the House Mike Moyle says he wants to repeal Medicaid expansion. Who's going to get their way here?
Well, the legislature is the one that gets to send the bill to the governor's desk, and then that's where the real fun starts. But Medicaid expansion is something the governor had said, I'm not going to repeal this as a cost-saving measure. Pretty prominent Republican lawmakers that are, in positions of power have said this is one of the first things to go. So that'll certainly be a heated debate.
Okay.
The other thing, though, that is happened, and the governor touched on it in passing without much details in his State of the Stakes. Honestly, it probably wouldn't have played super well, but there are $44 million cuts to Medicaid as a major program. Of course, last session they did the work requirements and they did the increased reporting and the verification requirements. That was criticized by some as making it as a burden to access health care. Others say we need to confirm that people are actually using this and they're eligible. Instead of doing yearly checks, we should check in every 6 months, whatever. So there are proposed cuts that were presented to JFAC earlier this week. Again, there are some coverage changes that we could get into the nitty gritty of it, and I would actually advise anyone who's interested. We'll have that report up from the 208 coming up. We'll get into that today as we tape this, but it'll be available when you watch this. The idea here is that there are some sacrifices you have to make, and I have the quote that I have on my phone from the governor that I'll paraphrase it instead of looking it up. Basically, it's like there's some tough decisions here. Yeah. And I asked the governor right after the State of the State in our interview as he walked out, I said to the governor, I read him his quote back and I said, what do you think the toughest cut to Idahoans is? And he gave a decent answer in the sense that it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but it made sense. He said, well, it depends who you are. It depends what your priorities are.
Right.
I was hoping, for a different soundbite, but he's correct. If your perspective is the most important thing is Medicaid, then this is going to be a painful cut. Yeah. If your perspective that the most important thing is Idaho launch, we'll see what, Idaho lawmakers do with that.
Right.
So we'll see. It's definitely a conversation that will go on for months. Yeah. I know that there's some people be like, oh, well, it's an election year. Is this going to drag on for month after month? We'll find out.
Yeah. It used to be that during an election year, which this is, they'd kind of try to get out of the legislature pretty early. No longer the case.
Different perspectives on that, too.
Yeah.
One perspective is, well, there's not a budget, so, they can't argue over new programs and they can't argue over what to do with the money. They're pretty limited. But then we've already seen that the difference in opinions on how to budget is going to drag out.
Yeah. And now they're going to argue over the cuts. Governor says he won't cut the education budget, but Joe, and you've already talked about cutting funding for Idaho Digital Learning Academy and cutting inefficiencies in virtual schools. Sounded like cuts to me, but I am not the political expert yet.
It's you definitely can qualify it as a cut. It's definitely moving money around in the sense.
Sorry, there were fans outside the podcast studio.
Oh, I saw, including the person who's in charge of both of us. So I didn't know if we should acknowledge that or
no,
not.
It's fine, yeah. I'll edit this out. I'm just kidding.
She gone? Okay.
Yeah.
No, she's great. I love Jess. She's the best. But back to the idea here. What was the question?
Education.
Oh, right.
It looks like there actually are cuts.
The
He's
Idaho,
like, I'm not going to cut public schools, but I am going to make these other education not cuts.
Yeah, so the Idaho Home Learning Academy, which we did some in-depth reporting on.
Yeah.
The way that, so it's a virtual public charter school, and it's really cool and innovative.
Yeah.
And in terms of a neutral perspective, not getting into the policies of it,
Sure.
It's a great concept. And you can talk about how you fund it or how it works, whatever. It's cool for families that their student learning is not best done in a classroom in the traditional sense. And there are different families, and Idaho prides in school choice. But you can definitely criticize and talk about the funding mechanism for it. Why should the student who's at home have in part of their distribution to the state, why would they be getting money to help pay for keeping the lights on while they're at home? So that's just a very basic general conversation there. So Is it a cut? Definitely. However, it's being framed as we need to fund this differently because it is different than traditional public schools. You can call it a loophole. You can call it a gap in the law. You can call it, unforeseen laws that were not designed to fund charter schools, virtual online charter schools. There just need to be some changes. And so, there's going to be some money changing for sure.
Yeah, and there could be some trimming of inefficiencies as well, and how people define that. That's going to be a fight as well. Idahoans really value education funding. So that could also be a big fight in the legislature this year. Also, you talked about what cuts people are going to feel the most. Say maybe you drive a lot throughout the state. Governor says he wants the Idaho Transportation Department to see a cut of $275 million from their Strategic Initiatives Fund, a one-time cut there. Did that surprise you at all?
The way it was framed, no, in the sense that the governor talked about, $1 billion of investments in recent years with his Leading Idaho plan. So it's like we've given you guys a lot of money, and you have these projects you're working on. We're going to take some of it this year because of where we are. Continue doing the work, continue doing the maintenance work. We've given you money to take care of this. Work on that backlog. However, there are certainly communities that are like, we have projects that are not getting done, and we are really hoping this gets fixed. So, it's so like meta in terms of seeing hundreds of millions of dollars and how it's budgeted, and whether you agree or disagree with the policy, to me is like mind blowing to watch up close how the budget for the state is done with all the staffers and the agencies and everything. It's wild. We do finances at home. We all do our finances at home. Just zooming that out for the whole state. It's like, woo, smarter people than me.
And incredible, this state's budget, smaller than most states' budgets and staffs.
Sure.
Much smaller as well. So this is Joe's last This Just In and This Joe In.
Is it? I'm not getting another episode?
If you buy into that, I don't think so, unless something crazy happens. We're going to take a look back after this. Welcome back to This Just In with Joe Parris. Joe, do not drink out of that. Again, it's lead-lined, but as for now, you're still an employee, but you're going to go get a real job. Now, you're going to leave us, but I want to let everybody know we'll be fine. No offense.
Oh, you guys will be fine.
But no one is irreplaceable. I mean, I've left twice. And then
Look at us.
Started 3 times. This is my 3rd stint here. So when can we expect you to return to us, Joe?
I'm just a spoke on the wheel. The wheel keeps on turning. No,
that's right, brother.
What was the question? When will I return?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, I'll visit you.
After the session when it gets boring.
Oh, sure.
What are some of your favorite memories from KTVB and, of course, This Just In?
I really love being on the show. And, Justin, I don't want to make you cry, but working with you, one of my best friends in the world, has been awesome. You and I used to do a wrestling podcast together, and then you came back to work here. So that's been a real joy.
Can't look at you while you're talking about
I'll look
that.
over there.
Gonna make
I
me
mean,
cry.
I see now I can break all the fourth walls and stuff. Like, Justin and I are very close friends outside of this. His wife and his family has always been great. They have my wife and son over and, let them terrorize. So, like, the relationships with people like you, and you have fun toys at your house, too. My son loves playing at your house.
I just added to them a lot of wrestling toys, actually. Yes.
Nice. Fantastic.
You guys got to come over.
So, like, people like you, and I don't have time to name everyone, but, like, the relationships is my favorite part. It sounds so cliche, but it's true. It's a relationship business. In terms of, like, stories, The Great Goat Escape, 2018, probably my favorite story.
The GOAT reporter, literally.
That's awesome. I mean, that was one of the biggest stories of the day that day. So that was sick.
Across the nation, the world, maybe.
Yeah, I was in publications in several different countries and languages, and I was on CNN. And my dad, I have a picture of him reading the New York Times, the weekend edition, and it's printed in there with my picture, and yeah, it was cool.
Okay, so I tried to run us out of time, but you were just too efficient with your answers. Joe, speaking of wrestling, what is your hottest wrestling take?
All right,
Pro wrestling.
Yes, so WWF Invasion 2001. The Survivor Series finish between, it was the WWF versus the Alliance, which is ECW and WCW, criticized for being a dumb end to the angle.
Yes.
I loved the Survivor Series matchup that was like 2 hours long. Team WWF versus Team The Alliance. I thought that was such a great match. You had all the biggest stars in the company, the biggest stars maybe in the history.
Wow.
I loved that match, and I've probably watched it more than any match I've ever watched.
Okay, so, but it essentially killed the angle.
Yeah, it ended
right?
it. It ended it. The WWF won.
But you could have continued to do that. You look at other angles that have gone on and had incredible success, like Bullet Club, like NWO. Now it's over after
NWO's over.
15. Yeah, but now it's over after they made a ton of money after they were making that green baby.
So that's why it's a hot take, because the invasion angle could have been done a lot better.
Wrong.
But I really love that match, and I love the way it ended with the betrayals and the exciting runouts and the Undertaker's big speech and The Rock going crazy, Kurt Angle, and then Paul Heyman with Jim Ross on commentary. It was a great crowd.
But matches don't exist in vacuums. And if it's a bad story around it, as fun as that might be to look back on that match and be like, oh, that was fun, like it's not serving the promotion and the storyline long term well if it's a bad finish, if it's not serving that story.
That's a hot take.
If it's killing a great angle. That is a hot take.
Hot take. I love it.
It's also a wrong take.
That's fine.
All righty. Well,
are we going to start the wrestling podcast again?
sorry, Joe. This is why you're never coming back on the show, because of terrible takes like that. But thank you for watching this JustIN. Joe, you're the absolute best.
Thanks.
If you have any comments or questions for Joe, maybe your own hot wrestling take, a better one than Joe, text him 208-321-5614, #JustIN. Joe, you're the absolute best, the MVP of the show, even better than me. We'll see you next time.